I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, protecting minors. The Supreme Court hears arguments in a challenge to Tennessee's ban on so-called gender-affirming care for children. We have analysis. Trump transition. Lawmakers weigh in on more of the president-elect's picks for his cabinet. Fallout in South Korea. A deeper dive into events in the East Asian nation that led to a declaration of martial law. Plus, a balm for the spirit. The faithful weigh in on a letter from the Holy Father to those being targeted by the Ortega regime in Nicaragua. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. John of Damascus. Our top story tonight, the Supreme Court hears oral arguments today in a landmark case regarding so-called gender-affirming care for minors. As you can see, the arguments drew protesters on both sides of the issue wanting to make their voices heard today. The justices are weighing a challenge to a law banning gender-affirming care for minors in Tennessee. At issue is whether the state's ban violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The ACLU attorney challenging the law says the ban leaves families terrified for the future, and access to this care is life-saving. Tennessee officials argue the law is designed to protect minors from risky, unproven medical interventions. The Tennessee law was signed by Governor Bill Lee last year. It prohibits all medical treatments intended to allow, quote, a minor to identify with or live as a purported identity inconsistent with the minor's sex. It also prohibits treating, quote, purported discomfort or distress from a discordance between the minor's sex and asserted identity. Chief Justice John Roberts questioned whether the issue is better left to state lawmakers.
Here, it seems to me that the medical issues are much more heavily involved than in many of the cases that you look to. And of course, we are not the best situated to address issues like that.
Meanwhile, Justice Brett Kavanaugh questioned how the challenge to Tennessee's law would affect transgender athletes in sports.
And I want to ask in particular about one thing. If you prevail here on the standard of review, what would that mean for women's and girls' sports in particular? Would transgender athletes have a constitutional right, as you see it, to play in women's and girls' sports, basketball, swimming, volleyball, track, et cetera, notwithstanding the competitive fairness and safety issues that have been vocally raised by some female athletes seen in the amicus brief of the many women athletes in this case?
No surprise, the case has gained nationwide attention and reaction from the faithful as well as church officials. The same month that Tennessee approved the ban, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops weighed in on gender reassignment surgery, saying, quote, such interventions do not respect the fundamental order of the human person as an intrinsic unity of body and soul with a body that is sexually differentiated. Catholic healthcare services must not perform interventions, whether surgical or chemical, that aim to transform the sexual characteristics of a human body into those of the opposite sex or take part in the development of such procedures. And joining us now to talk more about all of this is Mary Rice Hassan, the Cato Burns Senior Fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. She is also the director and co-founder of the Person and Identity Project. Mary, always so good to be with you. A lot to get to here, but first, what are your big takeaways from today's arguments?
Yeah, on the whole, I think it was a positive thing. I am cautiously optimistic. You can never predict exactly where the court is going to go. But I think it was interesting, some of the concerns that were raised. There was clearly a reluctance on the part of many of the justices for the court to wade into something that they saw as really medically unsettled. And so another interesting point was really the wide gulf in how the medical evidence was presented. And that wasn't the focus, but that was part of the discussion. And you heard two radically different presentations of that. And the attorneys were challenged on that as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. I know that Justice Neil Gorsuch really didn't weigh in on this today, but he did author a 2020 ruling protecting transgender people from workplace discrimination. Talk to us more about that, and why do you think maybe he was reluctant to weigh in?
Yeah, I think people were, or perhaps he was afraid that people were going to try to read the tea leaves if he said something or asked a particular question, that he was going to go one way or another. Because I think there is concern. The Bostock decision is very concerning for the substance, for the implications. It's being applied in ways that by its text, it was not supposed to be. So I think he was reticent, but Bostock did come up. It came up with the state or the U.S. government sort of trying to minimize, saying, well, you don't have to make this into a Bostock case, and being challenged on that to some degree. So I think it was interesting that the government, the U.S. government and the ACLU, in arguing against Tennessee's ban, they were trying to say, look, let's keep this simple. This is simply a matter of a state statute that is facially discriminatory on the basis of sex, and therefore the lower court should have applied a higher scrutiny, a higher level of scrutiny if it implicates a sex classification. Whereas Tennessee was saying, no, that's not the right way to look at this. This is about the medical purpose to which medicines might be put, and the state is perfectly within its power to regulate on the basis of public health and safety, and say it is not okay for a boy, for example, to want testosterone at the age of 10 just to get bigger muscles, whereas or put them on puberty suppression or something like that, whereas there are legitimate uses of this medicine for a different purpose. So it was, again, two different perceptions, where one was trying to say this is all about sex discrimination, and then the other saying, no, this is about the legitimate action of the state to regulate medical medicines for the protection of minors.
Yeah, almost out of time here, but some are saying that this could really be one of the most significant decisions of this term for the justices. Mary, can you talk to us more about that and the impact that this decision could have, not just in Tennessee, but on a broader scale? I know there are more than 20 states that have similar laws.
Sure. I think the ramifications are huge. I actually expect that the judges will probably just kick it back without trying to minimize what this is about and just keep it to standard of review. Justice Alito, one of the good things I thought about his questioning was he really raised the point about whether transgender status is a protected characteristic, and really pushed the ACLU attorney on that and said, is this immutable? Is it an immutable characteristic? And the attorney had to say no, backed off on that, which I think was a really important thing. So we'll see how it goes. It will have implications one way or another. And again, on the women's sports, the justices kept coming back to that, saying, if we kick this back, how is this going to affect the issue of women's sports? And, the U.S. government is trying to say, no, this is just its own thing. But in reality, this is, you can't parse all of this. You either grant some sort of protected status or you don't, or you go and you look at the purpose of the statute and you say, this is not about sex discrimination or, quote, transgender status. This is simply about the state doing what it is well positioned to do, a legislature looking at the medical evidence and making a decision. And we are going to uphold that authority of the state. So I'm cautiously optimistic. You never know.
Yeah, very, very important case. Mary, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
You're welcome.
The CEO of United Healthcare was fatally shot outside of a New York City hotel, and police are still looking for his killer. This is who police are looking for right here. They don't have a name yet, but they are offering $10,000 for information leading to an arrest. Brian Thompson was identified as the victim. You see him right there. The 50-year-old executive was in New York to attend a United Healthcare conference. Police say this was a targeted attack.
This does not appear to be a random act of violence. The victim was in New York City to speak at an investor conference. It appears the suspect was lying in wait for several minutes. And as the victim was walking to the conference hotel, the suspect approached from behind and fired several rounds, striking the victim at least once in the back and at least once in the right calf.
Police say after the shooting, the gunman ran through an alley and got away on an e-bike with a GPS device. Thompson is survived by his wife and 2 children. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says that he wants to give the incoming Trump administration the strongest hand to play when it comes to the war in Ukraine. Blinken made those comments while shoring up support for the war-torn country. However, Russia does not appear interested in compromising with its neighbor. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken attended 2 days of talks in Brussels, Belgium, meeting with NATO foreign ministers there. In discussing Ukraine, Blinken said the world doesn't just stop because the U.S. is going through a political transition.
As Russia launches deadly attacks on Ukraine and the number of those killed or seriously wounded climbs by the day, in Brussels, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken tells reporters with the Biden administration winding down, it wants to make sure Ukraine has what it needs going forward.
If Ukraine determines that it needs to continue the fight, we want to make sure it has what it needs to continue that fight. The money, the munitions, the mobilized forces.
However, should talks come up to end the fighting,
if it chooses to engage in a negotiation, and that assumes, of course, that Putin and Russia have any intent of doing that, then, again, we want to make sure it's from a position of strength.
Russia's deputy foreign minister said in an interview today that the chances for compromise at the moment are zero. And when asked about concerns over escalation, he warned,
today, I think danger of this scenario unfolding should not be underestimated by anyone.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says Vladimir Putin is not interested in peace. And today in Brussels, he urged NATO countries to spend more on defense.
But I believe strongly, and I know many allies believe strongly, that 2% is simply not enough. It is simply not enough if longer term we want to keep our deterrence at the level it is now.
President Joe Biden appealed to another part of the world today, meeting with African leaders gathered in Angola. He announced another $600 million in African investments.
All these projects and investments are designed to have high impact and meet the highest standards for workers, for the environment, and for the communities.
The U.S. is competing with China for influence on the continent.
President Biden used the final day of his visit to showcase the Libido Corridor Railway. It's a region rich in critical minerals. President Biden will return home overnight. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, thank you, Owen. And staying in the Caucasus region, one of Georgia's opposition leaders was detained by the police. As you can see in that video, he was dragged by several officers into a car. It comes amid protests against the government's decision to suspend negotiations on joining the European Union. More than 300 people have been detained. A Palestinian health official says dozens of people are dead after an Israeli airstrike hit a camp in Gaza, which had been housing displaced people. The Israeli military says that its aircraft struck senior Hamas militants involved in terrorist activities. Meanwhile, amid a nearly week-long ceasefire with Hezbollah, residents in a northern Israeli town close to Lebanon returned to check on their homes. And you can see in this video the collapsed roofs and damaged yards. The area was heavily struck by Hezbollah during Israel's ground invasion into Lebanon on October 1st. Israeli officials estimate about 60,000 people in northern Israel have been displaced. South Korea's opposition parties are moving to impeach the president over his short-lived declaration of martial law. An impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol would require support of 2/3 of parliament and the endorsement of at least 6 of the 9 justices on the Constitutional Court. The motion to impeach could come to a vote as early as Friday. Senior policy advisors offered their resignations following the events. Democratic Party lawmakers called the martial law order a, quote, clear violation of the Constitution. The Catholic Bishops' Conference of Korea also weighed in. In a statement, Bishop Matthias Ri Yong-hoon of Suwon wrote, President Yoon must appear before the people to explain what happened, sincerely apologize to the people, and take responsibility for the process of declaring and lifting martial law. Adding, the Catholic Church actively supports and stands in solidarity with the defense of our democracy. And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including a possible shakeup in President-elect Trump's new administration, why Pete Hegseth may be out and who may replace him. And Pope Francis has announced his prayer intention for this month, what he's praying for, and how you can join him. Judge judge has dropped the gun case against Hunter Biden following the sweeping pardon from his father, President Joe Biden. Meantime, the judge in the tax case against the president's son says the charges will be dropped once the pardon is formally received. But he had harsh words for the White House. The judge in California took issue with the assertion that the president's son was treated unfairly, adding that the tax evasion charges stem from after Hunter Biden claims he was battling addiction. Meantime, in Delaware, prosecutors opposed the dismissal of the gun case, saying the pardon should not wipe away the charges as if they never happened. On Sunday, Hunter Biden received a pardon dating back to 2014. Our Congress returns this week with a packed to-do list before it wraps up the session. Lawmakers face a key deadline of December 20th to avert a government shutdown. So time is running out, and many are starting to point fingers. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with that story. Eric.
Good evening, Tracy. Lawmakers only have 16 days to fund the government, pass a defense authorization bill, a disaster relief bill, and a farm bill extension. Not a lot of time to get a lot of things done. I did speak with the incoming Senate Majority Leader, Senator John Thune, who tells me that they should never be in this situation if the current Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, had done his job.
The CR, yet to be determined how long it will go. My assumption is at the end of the day, it'd be great if we could finish all of the unfinished business the Democrats handed us, which is the hand that we've been dealt by Senator Schumer since the Senate hasn't done anything for the past 6 months. We don't have any spending bills done. We don't have the defense authorization bill done. So it's kind of a pileup of things that we have to deal with.
Right now, lawmakers are moving toward a plan to pass a continuing resolution to temporarily fund the government into early 2025. However, the two parties haven't even agreed on a top-line number, let alone how to allocate the money across parts of the government.
We're trying to get it done, but the problem is on the Republican side, where the Republican Speaker and the majority leader and the Republican minority leader have different views on a top line. Until they resolve that, we can't get it done.
We're ready to pass a government funding bill with no drama, no partisan policy riders, and no surprises. We want to see urgent disaster aid to communities that need it, and we want to pass a defense bill that strengthens military readiness.
But Senator Dan Sullivan, a member of the Armed Services Committee, says he also blames the Senate Majority Leader for stalling on a defense funding bill.
Senator Schumer has not brought it to the floor. He's never prioritized the NDAA. He always waits to the end of the year. This passed out of committee in June. And this is what funds the military. This is what sets military policy.
And House Speaker Mike Johnson says Ukraine funding is not on the table.
It is not the place of Joe Biden to make that decision now. We have a newly elected president, and we're going to wait and take the new commander-in-chief's direction on all of that. So I don't expect any Ukraine funding to come up now.
Speaker Mike Johnson announced that the Republicans are currently working on a continuing resolution, but so far no formal announcement has been made, which means that no vote will likely take place this week. Tracy?
Well, Eric, I also know that you're following the latest developments on Trump's nominee for the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth. I know he met with more lawmakers today. What are you hearing?
Well, there's been lots of speculation that Hegseth is actually going to be replaced with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, but sources tell me that, quote, DeSantis is very much in contention. As a Navy veteran, he has the experience, but even Wyoming Senator Cynthia Lummis tells me that President Trump knew nothing about the new allegations that Hegseth was under the influence of alcohol during his time when he was running a veterans program, a charge which he denies. But here's what Cynthia Lummis had to say.
Well, these allegations that have come up just in the last 12 to 14 hours are a surprise to all of us. And so, yes, he does need to address those, because this was not something of which we were aware, nor was President Trump aware of them.
And make sure that we're putting the warfighters first. That's what Donald Trump asked me to do. Your job is to bring a warfighting ethos back to the Pentagon. Your job is to make sure that it's lethality, lethality, lethality. Everything else is gone. Everything else that distracts from that shouldn't be happening.
We tried to ask Hegseth about these new allegations, but he ended up just walking away from the media and other reporters out there. sources tell me that he did get a phone call from Trump, and he might be headed to Mar-a-Lago tomorrow. So what does that mean exactly? Senator Josh Hawley said that he was supposed to have a meeting with Hegseth tomorrow, but that has been canceled. So time will tell on exactly what will come out of that meeting. Tracy?
All right. Thank you so much, Eric. And for more now, we turn to Amanda Mackey, an attorney and Republican strategist. Amanda, great to be with you today. A lot to get to here. But first off, your thoughts on where things stand right now with Pete Hegseth?
Well, I don't have any senators saying that they are not supporting him on the Republican side. So very different than what we experienced just a few weeks ago before the holidays with the Attorney General nominee, Matt Gaetz. So I think these senators are willing to give a chance to Pete Hegseth to demonstrate why he is best equipped to take on this role of managing 3 million employees, civilians, and military. And that is the role of the United States Senate. That is the role of every senator, is an advice and consent role. And, you know, the Democrats are going to do what they do, but the Republicans here are going to, I think, give him a chance to explain himself and go from there.
Amanda, I know you're in Florida. Your thoughts on Ron DeSantis replacing Hegseth? I mean, do you buy into that?
Well, I certainly haven't heard it straight from the horse's mouth, as they say. So I think this is all speculation, but there's a little kernel of truth in everything that you hear. So I would say that Ron DeSantis is someone who is perfectly equipped to handle the Department of Defense. He obviously has been an officer in the military, served in a JAG role. He's been an executive of the third largest state in the United States, managing 22 million people, certainly a lot of hurricanes this year, very devastating hurricanes under his watch, and he's done a fantastic job of managing those things. I think the people of Florida would hate to see him go, especially those on the Republican side, but you know, I think he would be certainly someone who has the credentials, has the executive experience. And for those who are worried about the woke nature of our military these days and the difficult time we have recruiting, he is someone who has demonstrated in Florida. He's taken on those tackles and he's been successful.
Yeah, we will see what happens. I'm going to switch gears now. There has been some controversy, as you know, over President-elect Trump's pick for the head of the FBI. How would you respond to those who say that Kash Patel isn't qualified for the job?
Well, certainly you've seen other members in the Biden administration, namely the head of the Department of Transportation, who has never been qualified to head that agency up. But, you know, he still got confirmed and people still gave him a chance. Kash Patel has not only been a public defender, he is someone who has had multiple roles in the previous Trump administration and very high up roles, very senior roles. He's someone who's a controversial figure because he is going to shake things up at the FBI. Of course, that is something that I think that President Trump has always wanted, the DOJ and the FBI in particular, to have that shakeup and to get those career politicians out who play the game of politics. And Kash Patel is the best person to do it. But look, when you're controversial, people are going to go after you. But again, I would say no senator in their role, they're the only ones that matter. They're the ones that get to decide. No one has said anything ill of Kash Patel on the Republican side, that they would not support him. So again, they take this role very seriously. Their role of advice and consent, they're to go through all the documents. That's why they're in the United States Senate. And they're going to make the best decision. But one thing I always like to remind people, having worked in the United States Senate, is how valuable what they hear from constituents can be too. And a lot of times members of Congress want to know, what are constituents saying? What are the calls I'm getting? What are the letters that we're getting? What's the correspondence been? And Kash Patel is someone who has proven himself that he is a fighter, and he's going to go there and do what President Trump expects him to do, which is to shake up that agency.
All right, we're going to leave right there. Amanda, thank you so much for weighing in. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Democrat Adam Gray captured California's 13th congressional district, unseating Republican Congressman John Duarte in the final U.S. House contest to be decided this year. Gray's win allows Democrats to hold 215 seats in the House, but Republicans still have the majority at 220. Gray defeated Congressman Duarte by a margin of less than 200 votes. Gray, a former legislator, was critical of state water management and put water and agriculture at the top of his issues list. list. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, the Holy Father has announced his prayer intention for December. Hear how you can pray with the Pope this month. Plus, the Holy Father receives a gift with the battery included. We'll explain.
Una dea, un affetto e un invito a fare.
In his weekly talk to pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father reminds those who evangelize to always ask for help from the Holy Spirit because prayer is more important than pervasive words. Pope Francis also suggested they keep their homilies to around 10 minutes. Well, the Holy Father also releases his prayer intention for the month of December. In it, he asks the faithful to pray that each of us may become pilgrims of hope as a result of the 2025 Jubilee.
Y nosotros tenemos que estar aferrados a la cuerda de la esperanza.
The Holy Father says that Christian hope is a gift from God and it fills our lives with joy. He added that hope is an anchor that keeps us close to our Lord and always have to hold on to the rope of hope. Pope Francis also met today with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. They discussed a number of issues, including the war in Ukraine. During the 35-minute meeting, the two also discussed ways to end the war in Ukraine. The Holy Father and the Hungarian Prime Minister have both been outspoken about finding a ceasefire agreement. Orban also met Cardinal Pietro Parolin. The Vatican official expressed his appreciation for Hungary's recognition of the importance of family and protection of younger generations. So Pope Francis is expressing closeness and affection to the people in Nicaragua in the midst of persecution from the regime of President Daniel Ortega. In an open letter to the faithful in the Central American country, the Holy Father reminded them that, quote, faith and hope work miracles. He also invited them to turn their eyes to the Immaculate Virgin Mary, the luminous witness of confidence, and to pray the rosary. The letter comes at a critical time for the country as Ortega and his wife have now been approved as co-president and officially have total control of the government there. Many of the faithful say they welcome the message. One Nicaraguan now living in exile said, quote, his words of encouragement are a balm for our spirit and a reminder of the transforming power of faith and hope. Finally tonight, even though it isn't Christmas yet, the Holy Father just received a really nice gift, and you could say it gave him a real charge. The CEO of Mercedes-Benz presented the Holy Father with a new electric Popemobile. The open-air vehicle features a rotating heated seat and a heated handrail to keep Pope Francis warm while greeting pilgrims during the winter. It also features two Holy See flags in the front. Mercedes-Benz has provided vehicles to the Vatican for 94 years. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night and God bless.